A true story from Florida. My son and his wife invited me to stay in their villa. Then they vanished. Imagine getting a call from your own son saying, "Mom, come down to Florida. Stay at our villa, relax. It's your time to enjoy." I, Margaret, truly believed this was the most beautiful gift I could ever receive. I thought I was stepping into a dream. But what was supposed to be comfort and family warmth quickly turned into something else. At first, everything seemed perfect. Family dinners, laughter, long walks by the beach. And then one morning, without a note, without a word, they were simply gone. No calls. No texts, no explanation. Just silence. Alone in an unfamiliar house. I realized this wasn't just about them being busy or forgetful. Their sudden disappearance carried a reason, one that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my own family. My name is Margaret, and for most of my life, I've prided myself on being a quiet, steady presence in my family. I raised my son with the hope that when he grew up, he would feel both supported and loved. That's why, when the phone rang one Thursday morning, and I heard his voice bright and enthusiastic, I felt my heart skip a beat. "Mom," he said, "how would you like to spend a few months in Florida with us? We've got this beautiful villa, and you deserve a break." At first, I thought I had misheard him. My son and his wife lived well, but an invitation like this felt unusual. He wasn't the type to offer something so extravagant, and I couldn't help but wonder if he needed something from me. But when I asked why, his response was simple. "Because you've always done so much for me. It's time you relax. You'll love the sunshine." I wanted to believe it was as pure as it sounded. After all, what mother doesn't want to feel appreciated? So, without hesitation, I said yes. That night, I told my sister about the invitation, and she frowned. "It sounds wonderful, but are you sure there isn't more to it? Sometimes people offer gifts when they're hiding something." I laughed it off. My son wasn't perfect, but he wasn't a liar. At least, I didn't think so. As I packed my bags, I felt a swell of excitement. The thought of warm beaches, palm trees swaying outside the window, and dinners with family filled my mind. But beneath the excitement, a flicker of unease lingered. Something about his tone on the phone seemed rehearsed, as if he were reading lines from a play. I shook it off, convincing myself I was being paranoid. The next morning, I boarded the plane, clutching my small suitcase and a heart full of hope. Florida was waiting. My son was waiting. And I believed, with every ounce of me, that this trip was going to be a gift of peace. I couldn't have been more wrong. The moment I stepped off the plane, Florida greeted me with a wall of warmth. The kind that clings to your skin and makes you feel alive. My son Michael stood at the gate, grinning from ear to ear. He looked healthier than I'd seen him in years. Tan skin, tailored shirt, and an energy that almost felt too polished. His wife, Vanessa, waved beside him, her wide smile perfectly timed for when I looked her way. They hugged me, carried my bag, and whisked me into their sleek car. "You're going to love the villa," Vanessa said, her voice sugar-sweet. "It's right by the water. You'll never want to leave." As we drove, I stared at palm trees flashing by and marveled at the thought of waking up every morning in such a place. Michael turned to me, saying, "This is just the beginning, Mom. We've been planning this for months." Planning. The word stuck in my mind. Why plan months ahead for a surprise trip without ever mentioning it? Still, I smiled, wanting to believe their intentions were pure. When we arrived, my jaw dropped. The villa looked like something out of a magazine. Arched doorways, sprawling balconies, white columns gleaming under the sun. Inside, the air smelled of jasmine candles, and every surface sparkled as though prepared for an inspection. Vanessa gave me the grand tour, pointing out my bedroom with a queen bed, overlooking the pool. Dinner that night was lively. Shrimp pasta, wine glasses clinking, laughter echoing through the villa. Michael and Vanessa exchanged glances often, whispers under their breath I couldn't quite catch. At one point, I excused myself to the bathroom, and when I came back, their laughter halted abruptly. For the first time, I felt like a guest in my own son's life, not a mother. A guest who had walked in on something not meant for her, but I brushed it off. After all, wasn't this what family vacations were supposed to feel like? A little awkward, a little clumsy, but filled with love, That night, lying in my bed, I stared at the ceiling fan circling slowly. Their kindness was real, yes, but rehearsed. And as much as I wanted to let the Florida sun melt my doubts away, the unease from before returned, whispering that something was coming. The first few days at the villa felt like paradise. Morning walks along the shore, coffee on the balcony, and evenings filled with music. Michael and Vanessa seemed like the perfect hosts, attentive, doting, always ensuring I felt comfortable. Yet, every now and then, I'd catch Vanessa's eyes narrowing at me when she thought I wasn't looking. It happened one morning at breakfast. I was pouring coffee when Michael stepped outside to take a call. Vanessa leaned over and said quietly, "You know, it's important you really enjoy yourself here. Michael's worked so hard for all of this, and it would mean a lot if you appreciated it." Her words stung. I forced a smile and replied, "Of course. I'm grateful." But deep down, I wondered why she needed to remind me. Appreciation was something a mother gave freely. It didn't need to be requested. Later that day, I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. My bedroom door was cracked open, and their voices carried through the hallway. "She doesn't know yet," Vanessa hissed. "She doesn't need to." "Not now," Michael snapped back. I froze, my heart pounding. Didn't know what? I wanted to storm in and demand answers, but instead, I stayed silent, my mind spinning with possibilities. Were they hiding financial trouble? Relationship issues? Something about me. When they emerged later, their faces were smooth, their voices cheerful, as if nothing had happened. Michael handed me a glass of wine and said, "To family." I clinked glasses with him, but the word tasted bitter on my tongue. That night, the villa felt less like a paradise and more like a stage. Every smile rehearsed, every gesture too perfect. And I couldn't shake the feeling that, somehow, I wasn't just a guest. I was part of their performance. It started with small disappearances. Michael would step out to run errands and be gone for hours. Vanessa would say she was meeting friends, but when I asked which ones, she'd wave her hand vaguely. One evening, after they both left for business, I decided to explore the villa. I wandered into the study, a room I hadn't been shown during the tour. On the desk sat neatly stacked papers, envelopes, and a laptop still open. I glanced at the screen and froze. It was an email chain. From Michael to someone I didn't know. The subject line read, "Transfer of deed." I leaned closer, heart racing. The email mentioned timelines, signatures, and something about keeping her in the dark until it's done. My stomach dropped. Was I the her? I quickly closed the laptop, terrified of being caught. My hands shook as I backed out of the study. For the rest of the night, I sat by the window, waiting for them to come home, my mind a storm of questions. When they returned, cheerful as ever, I forced myself to smile. But inside, I had already begun connecting dots I didn't want to see. The next morning, I pretended everything was normal. Pancakes, small talk, laughter, but my mind was fixated on the email. Transfer of deed? What deed? What property? And why did it involve keeping me in the dark? I decided to test them. Over breakfast, I said casually, "This villa must cost a fortune. Do you own it outright?" Vanessa froze for just a second before recovering with a smile. "Oh yes. Michael made some smart investments." "You know how he is," Michael chuckled, but his eyes darted toward Vanessa like they were reading from the same script. My heart sank. I knew then, whatever was happening, they were in it together. That day, I took a walk along the shore to clear my head. As I watched waves crash against the sand, I replayed their words, their glances, their too perfect gestures. The villa wasn't just a gift. I was part of a plan, but what plan? When I returned, I found Vanessa in my room, rifling through my dresser drawers. She jumped when she saw me and laughed nervously. "Oh, I was just looking for extra towels." I smiled tightly, but inside, fury burned. Towels weren't kept in dresser drawers. Something was deeply, dangerously wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. The villa was silent, the kind of silence that makes your skin prickle. Around midnight, I heard voices drifting through the air vent near my bed. "She suspects something," Vanessa whispered. "Doesn't matter." "It'll all be over soon," Michael replied. I covered my mouth with my hand, stifling a gasp. The words replayed in my head. "It'll all be over soon." Tears stung my eyes. My own son, my flesh and blood, was planning something against me. I wanted to believe I was wrong, that I had misunderstood, but the evidence was stacking too high to ignore. I stayed awake until dawn, the weight of betrayal crushing me. The sun rose over the Florida horizon, but inside me, a storm was brewing. By the 7th day, I couldn't pretend anymore. Every smile from Michael felt like a knife, every hug from Vanessa like a trap. I decided to quietly gather my own information. While they went out shopping, I returned to the study and opened the laptop again. This time, I scrolled further through the emails. My worst fears solidified. The deed wasn't about the villa, it was about my house back home. The one I'd lived in for 30 years. The one my late husband and I had worked our whole lives to pay off. Somehow, Michael was trying to transfer it without my knowledge. My knees buckled. Betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial too. I shut the laptop, my breath shallow. They thought I was naive. They thought I was too old, too trusting, too blind. But they were wrong. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a battle. The morning it all began felt oddly normal. I woke to the smell of fresh coffee drifting from the kitchen, the Florida sun spilling through my curtains. I walked out expecting to see Michael scrolling his phone at the counter, Vanessa humming as she cooked. Instead, silence. The coffee pot was half full, 2 cups abandoned beside it. I called out, "Michael?" "Vanessa," no answer. Their car keys weren't on the hook by the door, and the driveway was empty. Maybe they'd gone out for groceries, I thought. But hours passed, and the villa stayed silent. By noon, unease settled deep in my chest. I checked every room, every closet, even the garage. Their things were gone. Clothes, toiletries, even Vanessa's jewelry box. It wasn't a grocery run. They had packed up and left. My hands shook as I dialed Michael's number. Straight to voicemail. Vanessa's too. I sent text after text. "Where are you? Is everything okay?" No reply. The villa, once alive with chatter, now felt cavernous, echoing with my own heartbeat. That night I sat by the pool, staring at the water. The realization crept in slowly, cruelly. I hadn't been invited to Florida for family bonding. I had been lured here, and now I was utterly alone. The next morning, fear gave way to anger. I wasn't about to sit around like a helpless old woman. I began searching. In the master bedroom closet, hangers dangled empty. But in a corner behind a stack of shoeboxes, I found an envelope. My name wasn't on it. It was addressed to someone named Derek. Inside were notes scribbled in Michael's handwriting. "Mom settled here. Transfer in 2 weeks. She won't notice until it's done." My blood turned cold. Transfer. Again that word. On the kitchen counter, I found a crumpled receipt for a storage unit rented in Vanessa's name. A storage unit? What did they need to store when they already had a furnished villa? Piece by piece, their absence started to look less like a disappearance and more like an escape route. I sat at the dining table, staring at the documents. My son had orchestrated this. The villa wasn't a gift. It was a distraction, a holding cell draped in sunshine until he could strip away what was mine. I pressed my palms flat against the table and whispered aloud, "Not this time. Not me." That afternoon, I decided to walk around the neighborhood. If Michael and Vanessa had been planning something, maybe someone nearby had noticed. At the corner, I met an older couple watering their lawn. They smiled politely, and when I introduced myself as Michael's mother, their eyes flickered. "Oh," the woman said slowly, "so you're Margaret. We've seen you around the villa. Did you see Michael and Vanessa leave?" I asked. They exchanged a glance. The man cleared his throat. "They packed up yesterday morning. Loaded the car with boxes. Looked in quite a rush." Boxes. So this had been deliberate. My chest tightened. "Did they say where they were going?" The couple shook their heads. "No, but they seemed tense." I thanked them and walked away, my legs trembling. So I hadn't imagined it. They had fled, deliberately, leaving me stranded in their villa like a discarded suitcase. But why leave so suddenly if their plan was already in motion? Unless something or someone had forced their hand. That night, as I sat in the living room scrolling through my phone, a notification popped up. A video message from an unknown number. With hesitant fingers, I pressed play. The screen lit up with Vanessa's face. Her tone was sharp, almost mocking. "Margaret, by the time you see this, we'll be gone. Don't bother calling. This villa, not ours. We rented it for show. You're sitting in a house that isn't even in our name. You should enjoy it while you can, because soon you'll have nothing left back home." The video ended abruptly. I dropped the phone onto my lap, my vision swimming. My son and his wife had orchestrated everything, inviting me here, disappearing, leaving me alone, only to rub salt in the wound with a cruel message. I buried my face in my hands. The betrayal wasn't just real, it was being documented. That night I couldn't close my eyes. Every creak of the villa felt amplified, every shadow a threat. I replayed Vanessa's smirk from the video until it burned into my mind. By dawn, exhaustion gave way to resolve. If they thought I would crumble, they underestimated me. I had raised Michael. I had survived the loss of my husband. I had built a life brick by brick. I wasn't about to let it all slip away. I pulled out a notebook from my bag and began writing. Dates, times, details. The strange phone calls, the overheard whispers, the emails about the deed, the neighbor's testimony, the cruel video. Each note became a weapon. Each memory, ammunition. For the first time since arriving, I felt clarity. They hadn't destroyed me. They had lit a fire inside me. I needed help. Quietly, carefully, I called my lawyer back home, Mr. Dalton. I told him only part of the story, enough to raise the alarm without sounding hysterical. "Check my property records," I said. "See if anyone's trying to move a transfer." He promised to investigate immediately. Later, I called my sister. Her voice trembled when she heard. "Margaret, you need to come home now. Something about this feels dangerous," I agreed, but a part of me resisted. If I left Florida, I'd be walking away without answers, without proof. And I knew Michael. He would twist the story until I looked like the ungrateful, confused old woman. No, I needed to stay. Just a little longer. 2 days passed, and still no word from Michael or Vanessa. But silence had turned into strategy. Mr. Dalton called with confirmation. "Margaret, you were right. Someone filed preliminary paperwork to transfer your property. It hasn't gone through yet, but it was set in motion." My heart lurched. So I wasn't paranoid. My son had tried to steal my home. As I hung up, my phone buzzed again. Another video message. This time it was Michael. His voice was cold. "Mom, don't fight this. You'll only make it worse for yourself. Sign what we need when we get back, and you'll still have something left. Otherwise, you'll lose it all." I stared at the screen, fury and heartbreak colliding. He thought I was weak. He thought I would fold. But in that moment, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. The villa felt less like a trap now and more like a war room. Every corner reminded me of betrayal, but instead of paralyzing me, it sharpened me. I began each day with the same routine: coffee at the dining table, notebook open, pen in hand. I wrote down everything I knew, every odd detail, every word from Michael and Vanessa that no longer made sense. Patterns began to form. I remembered Vanessa, warning me to appreciate what Michael had built. I recalled their argument in the kitchen about me not knowing yet. I pieced these fragments together until the truth became unavoidable. Their invitation had been a cover, a distraction to buy them time. While I enjoyed Florida's beaches, they had been moving pieces behind the curtain. Still, there was something missing. A reason. Why go to such lengths to strip me of my home? Michael had a good job. Vanessa flaunted luxury handbags. Was it greed? Or was there more? I forced myself to think logically. If I wanted to fight, I couldn't let grief blur the facts. I called Mr. Dalton again, updating him on the second video message. His voice hardened. "Margaret, keep those videos. Don't delete them. They're evidence of coercion. This isn't just about property. It's about fraud. Fraud." The word echoed in my mind. Suddenly, I wasn't just a mother betrayed. I was the victim of a crime, and crimes could be punished. I closed my notebook that evening with a strange calm. For the first time in days, I slept through the night. My son wanted me broken. Instead, he had made me sharper than I'd ever been. The next morning, I couldn't shake the receipt I had found earlier, the one for the storage unit in Vanessa's name. If they had left clues behind, maybe the answers were in that unit. I called a cab and gave the driver the address. The storage facility sat on the edge of town, a row of metal doors under the sweltering Florida sun. I showed the clerk the receipt. At first he hesitated, but when I explained I was family, his suspicion softened. "Unit 42, he said, pointing down the row. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. Inside were boxes labeled with my name, photo albums, old legal files, even the deed to my house, photocopied, highlighted, with sticky notes all over it. I rifled through the papers, my breath shallow. They had been planning this for months, maybe years. Among the papers I found a notebook in Vanessa's handwriting, pages of calculations, potential payouts, lists of assets. My name appeared again and again, circled in red ink. My stomach turned, but my resolve hardened. They weren't just trying to steal. They were dismantling my entire life. Piece by piece, I snapped photos of everything with my phone before leaving the unit locked exactly as I found it. When the cab dropped me back at the villa, I felt stronger than ever. I wasn't powerless. I had evidence, and soon I would have justice. That evening, another notification buzzed on my phone. My stomach clenched. Another video. This time, both Michael and Vanessa appeared on screen. Michael's face was tight, his eyes cold. "Mom," he began, "you need to stop. We know you've been snooping. If you dig any deeper, you'll regret it. Just sign over what we need, and we'll make sure you're comfortable. Refuse, and you'll be left with nothing." Vanessa smirked beside him, adding, "Think about your age, Margaret. Do you really want to spend your last years fighting battles you can't win?" The video ended. I sat frozen, the silence pressing in. But then, almost unexpectedly, laughter bubbled up from my chest. It was bitter, sharp, but real. They thought fear would break me. They didn't realize their threats only made my case stronger. I saved the video, forwarded it to Mr. Dalton, and added another entry to my growing file of evidence. Regret it? I muttered to myself. No, Michael. You're the one who's going to regret this. The following day, a knock on the villa door startled me. When I opened it, the older couple from the neighborhood stood outside. "We noticed your son's car hasn't been back," the woman said gently. "We just wanted to check if you're all right." For a moment, I almost broke down. Instead, I invited them in and shared part of the truth. Not everything, but enough to explain that Michael and Vanessa had left me suddenly. The man frowned deeply. "You know, I shouldn't say this, but we saw something strange the day they left. They weren't just carrying boxes. They had a man with them. Tall, dark hair, lots of tattoos. He looked rough. A third person. My pulse quickened. Who was he? Another partner in their scheme? The couple promised to keep an eye out for me and slipped away, leaving me with another puzzle piece. If Michael and Vanessa weren't working alone, their plan might be even bigger than I had imagined. I sat at the dining table, staring at my growing pile of evidence. My story wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about exposing something darker. That evening, Mr. Dalton called again. His voice was urgent. "Margaret, I've pulled more records. Someone tried to impersonate you at the bank last week. They used forged documents, even an ID with your name. Luckily, the bank flagged it." My knees buckled, and I sank into a chair. Impersonation. Fraud. Theft. The scheme was broader than I realized. "Margaret," he continued, "you need to be careful. People like this, they don't just stop when you resist. They push harder." I thanked him, my heart heavy but my resolve unshaken. If Michael thought he could erase me, he had underestimated his own mother. I placed my notebook on the table, added today's date, and wrote in bold letters, "This is no longer just survival. This is justice." That night I packed my suitcase quietly. Not because I was running, but because I was done waiting in their villa like a trapped bird. Tomorrow I would return home, not defeated, but armed with evidence and ready to fight. I arranged the files, photos, and videos into a neat binder. My weapon, my shield. Proof that I wasn't the confused, helpless woman they imagined. Standing at the balcony, I looked out at the Florida night, the moon casting silver across the waves. My son had betrayed me in the cruelest way, but he had also given me something I didn't expect. Clarity. They wanted me broken. Instead, they had sharpened me into steel. Tomorrow, the counterattack would begin. When I stepped back into my own house, suitcase dragging behind me, it felt both familiar and foreign. The smell of lavender from the old diffuser still lingered. The pictures of Michael's childhood still lined the walls, yet everything had shifted. My son had turned this home into a target, and I could no longer look at it with the same innocence. I set my suitcase down in the hallway and went straight to the living room. On the coffee table, I spread out my binder, the photos of the storage unit, the notes in Vanessa's handwriting, and the videos where Michael had threatened me. It was no longer just evidence, it was my shield, my declaration that I wasn't going to be erased. I called Mr. Dalton and told him I was back. He insisted we meet the next morning. "We'll go to the authorities together," he said firmly. "What you've collected is enough to start an official case." His tone was steady, reassuring, the kind of anchor I desperately needed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window in the dark, staring out at the garden Michael used to play in as a child. Memories kept colliding with the present. The little boy with scraped knees and bright laughter had become a man who could smile while plotting my downfall. How had we gotten here? Was there a moment I had missed? A sign I ignored? Yet the grief quickly hardened into determination. The boy I raised might be gone, but I wasn't going to let the man he had become destroy me. My pen scratched across the last page of my notebook. Tomorrow, the truth begins. When morning finally came, I dressed in my sharpest blazer, tied my silver hair back, and looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection was no longer that of a broken woman. I looked like someone who had been through fire and was ready to step into battle. As I locked the door and headed toward Mr. Dalton's office, I whispered under my breath, "Michael, you wanted a war. Now you'll have one." Mr. Dalton's office smelled faintly of leather and old paper, a comforting mix of tradition and authority. As I laid out my binder on his desk, his eyes scanned through the pages quickly but carefully. He paused often, tapping his pen against the table, his brow furrowing deeper with each new piece of evidence. "Margaret," he finally said, leaning back in his chair, "you have more than just suspicion here. You have proof of coercion, fraud, and intent to seize assets unlawfully. If we act swiftly, we can not only protect the estate, but also expose them for what they've done." His words gave me a strange comfort, but also a cold shiver. Exposing Michael and Vanessa meant dragging my own son through a public trial. The thought twisted my stomach, but the alternative, silence, would destroy everything my late husband had built. Mr. Dalton leaned forward, lowering his voice. "But you must be ready. Once this is in motion, Michael will know you're not as helpless as he thought. He may get desperate," I nodded, feeling the weight of his warning. "Let him," I whispered. "He thinks I'm weak. He has no idea how long I've been preparing for this." By the time I left his office, legal documents were already in motion. My estate was frozen under protective measures, my bank account secured, and an injunction filed against unauthorized access. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sliver of safety, but safety was fragile. As I stepped outside, I noticed a car parked across the street, windows tinted, engine idling. My instincts screamed that it wasn't just coincidence. Someone was watching me. I straightened my back, refusing to show fear. If they wanted to watch, let them. Soon they'd realize the woman they underestimated wasn't running anymore. She was coming for them. The call came that evening. Michael's voice, once the sweetest comfort in my world, now dripped with venom. "What the hell did you do, Mom?" he hissed. "Do you have any idea what kind of mess you've started?" I held the phone tightly, keeping my voice steady. "I protected what your father built." "What I built, what you tried to steal." There was silence for a moment, followed by his bitter laugh. "You think this is about money? You think you can stand in my way? Vanessa and I deserve that estate. You're old, you don't need it. We do." Every word pierced deeper, but I refused to flinch. "Deserve?" I repeated slowly. "No, Michael. You don't deserve. You schemed. There's a difference." He cursed loudly, his temper boiling. "You're going to regret this. You hear me? When I'm done, you'll wish you'd never crossed me." I hung up before he could finish. My hands trembled slightly, but my heart was resolute. The boy I raised was gone, replaced by a man blinded by greed. His threats no longer scared me. They fueled me. That night, I tucked away my binder in a fireproof safe, double-locked my doors, and sat by the window again. If Michael wanted a war, he had just declared it with that call, and I would be ready. The next morning, Vanessa showed up at my doorstep. She wore a bright red dress, her makeup flawless, but her eyes betrayed her agitation. "Margaret," she began sweetly, "can we talk?" I didn't invite her inside. Instead, I crossed my arms and stood firm at the door. "Talk here." Her smile faltered. "Look, this doesn't have to be ugly. We're family. Michael and we just thought it made sense for us to manage the estate. You don't need all that stress at your age." I almost laughed at her audacity. "Manage?" I said coldly. "You mean take, lie, manipulate?" Her eyes narrowed. The sweetness dissolved. "Fine. If you want to make this difficult, don't blame me when it gets worse. Michael warned you, and I'll warn you too. You won't win." I leaned closer, my voice sharp but calm. "You and Michael made one mistake. You thought my love for him would blind me forever. But you forgot. My love doesn't make me weak. It makes me fierce when he betrays it." Her lips tightened, and without another word she turned and stormed down the path. I watched her go, my heartbeat steady. They weren't just rattled, they were desperate. And desperation makes people sloppy. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. A knock on my door revealed Claire, Vanessa's own cousin. She looked nervous, glancing over her shoulder before stepping inside. "Margaret," she whispered, "I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I overheard Michael and Vanessa last week. They've been planning to sell parts of the estate under the table. That's why they wanted control so badly. They even bragged about cutting you out completely." I felt my knees weaken, but not from shock. I had suspected it. What surprised me was Claire's courage. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked softly. "Because family or not, what they're doing is wrong," she said firmly. "I know where some of the documents are. If you want proof, I can help." Gratitude surged through me. For weeks I had felt isolated, betrayed, alone. But now someone had stepped into the fire with me. "Claire," I said, gripping her hands, "you may have just saved everything." Together, we mapped out what she knew, and for the first time, I realized something powerful. Michael and Vanessa weren't invincible. They had cracks in their armor, and I had just found an ally willing to help me exploit them. With Claire's guidance, we went to the small office space Vanessa rented for her consulting business. While Vanessa was out, Claire used the spare key she once borrowed. Inside, we found exactly what I had hoped for: files detailing secret property transfers, bank slips showing offshore accounts, and emails that made their intent undeniable. I took photos of everything, my hands shaking not from fear but from exhilaration. This was it. The proof that would not only protect my estate, but also show the world who Michael and Vanessa truly were. As I packed up my camera, Claire touched my shoulder. "You need to be careful. Once they realize this is missing, they'll know someone betrayed them." I nodded. "Let them wonder. For once, they'll be the ones living in fear." That night, back in my home, I added the new evidence to my binder. It was thicker now, heavier, but it felt like a weapon forged in fire. Tomorrow I would take it to Mr. Dalton. Tomorrow, the storm would break. Before I could deliver the files, Michael invited me to a family dinner. The message felt less like an invitation and more like a command. My gut told me it was a trap, but I went anyway. Better to face them head on. The restaurant was dimly lit, the table already set when I arrived. Michael and Vanessa sat side by side, their smiles cold. "Mom," Michael said smoothly, "we just want to talk. Settle things like a family." I sipped my water, saying nothing. Vanessa leaned forward. "If you sign over the estate now, we'll make sure you're taken care of." "Isn't that what you want? Security?" I almost laughed. "Security?" I said softly. "Do you think stealing from me will ever make me feel secure?" Michael's mask cracked, anger flashing in his eyes. "Then you leave us no choice." I leaned back, calm and deliberate. "No, Michael. You leave me no choice." I slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a single photo of the documents Claire and I had uncovered. Their faces drained of color as they realized what it meant. For the first time, they were the ones caught off guard. The following morning, I handed everything over to Mr. Dalton. Within hours, he filed motions that froze Vanessa's accounts, blocked unauthorized sales, and launched an official fraud investigation. When the papers were served, Michael called again. This time, his voice was not angry, it was panicked. "Mom, please," he begged. "We can work this out. Don't ruin us like this." I closed my eyes, my heart heavy. You ruined yourself, Michael. I just finally stopped you. For the first time, I heard silence on the other end. No threats, no rage, just silence. Then he hung up. I looked at the binder one last time, then placed it in Dalton's hands for safekeeping. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. For the first time, victory felt possible. As I walked out of the courthouse, the sun broke through the clouds, and I whispered to myself, "This is only the beginning." The courtroom was colder than I expected. Marble floors echoed with every step, and the air buzzed with tension. I sat beside Mr. Dalton, my hands folded neatly in my lap, though my heart beat like a drum inside my chest. Across the aisle sat Michael and Vanessa, whispering furiously to each other. For the first time, I noticed the panic in their faces. The shine of their confidence dulled into fear. The judge entered, and all rose. When the proceedings began, Mr. Dalton spoke with calm authority. He laid out the evidence, the emails, the secret accounts, the attempted transfers. Each piece of proof landed like a hammer on stone. Vanessa's face tightened, and Michael's jaw clenched, his knuckles white as he gripped the table. When it was their turn, their lawyer scrambled to explain. He called it a misunderstanding, a family dispute exaggerated. But the judge wasn't swayed. The documents painted a picture too clear to ignore. At one point, when Vanessa tried to interrupt, the judge cut her off sharply. I watched silently, refusing to gloat, refusing to cry. My role here wasn't to argue. It was simply to stand firm in truth. Every lie they spun only tightened the noose around them. When court recessed for the day, Michael glanced at me. His eyes weren't filled with anger anymore. They were pleading. But I looked away. Mercy was not mine to give. Justice belonged to the truth. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed, microphones stretched forward, voices clamored for statements. Vanessa tried to smile, insisting to anyone who would listen that this was all a family misunderstanding. But the cracks in her mask were obvious. Her voice shook, her eyes darted nervously, and sweat glistened on her forehead under the harsh midday sun. I stood silently beside Mr. Dalton, answering no questions. Let them speculate. The truth would come soon enough. Later that evening, I saw an online article already circulating. Headlines screamed, "Wealthy widow battles son and fiancé over $4 million estate, fraud allegations surface." The comments were brutal, many siding with me, others tearing Vanessa apart. She had always thrived on social admiration, on being envied for her poise and beauty. Now, her name was attached to betrayal and fraud. Claire called me that night. "She won't survive this, Margaret. Vanessa needs reputation like air. Once it's gone, she'll suffocate." I nodded quietly, realizing Claire was right. This battle wasn't just about money anymore. It was about survival. And Vanessa, for all her bravado, was unraveling before the world's eyes. The next day, Michael came to see me. He didn't call ahead. He just showed up at my door, looking 10 years older than when this began. His shoulders sagged, his eyes bloodshot, his once proud stance crumbling. "Mom," he whispered when I opened the door. "Please, can we talk?" I let him inside but kept my guard up. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd eaten cereal as a boy, and buried his face in his hands. "I messed up. I see that now." Vanessa pushed, but I let her. I was greedy. I thought I could control everything. His words tugged at something deep inside me, the memory of my son before ambition poisoned him. But I stayed firm. "Michael, I begged you once to stop this." "You didn't! You had chance after chance!" He looked up, tears brimming. "I don't want to lose you, Mom. Please. If we settle this quietly." I cut him off. "Quietly? After all the lies? After threatening me? After trying to erase me from my own life?" Silence hung heavy. Finally, he whispered, "Then I've lost everything." I didn't answer. In my heart, I mourned the boy he once was. But the man in front of me had made his choices, and choices carry consequences. Weeks later, the courtroom filled once again. I sat rigid, every nerve taut, as the judge read the decision. All claims by Michael Harrison and Vanessa Reed are denied. The estate remains under Margaret Harrison's sole authority. Furthermore, evidence of attempted fraud has been referred to the district attorney for further action. The words washed over me like a cleansing wave. Relief mingled with sorrow, a bittersweet victory carved from betrayal. Vanessa gasped audibly, her perfect facade shattering as she buried her face in her hands. Michael sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the floor, shoulders slumped in defeat. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. Justice isn't something to celebrate. It's something to respect. I simply bowed my head, whispering a thank you to my late husband. His legacy was safe. As the gavel struck, I rose and walked out, reporters shouting questions I didn't hear. All I felt was the weight lifting from my chest. The war was over. In the weeks that followed, Vanessa vanished from social circles. Invitations dried up, her consulting business collapsed, and whispers followed her everywhere. Claire told me she had moved back in with her parents, her once lavish lifestyle reduced to nothing. One evening, I saw her at the grocery store. She wasn't in heels or designer clothes. She wore plain jeans, her hair tied back, her cart filled with basics. When our eyes met, she looked away quickly, her face burning with shame. For a moment, I almost felt pity. But then I remembered the nights I spent alone, afraid, betrayed, abandoned in her villa. I remembered her threats, her cruelty, her lies. Pity had no place here. She had chosen her path. I walked past her without a word. That silence spoke louder than anything I could have said. Back home, I sat in the garden where Michael once played with toy cars, where laughter used to echo. The flowers bloomed as if untouched by the storm of betrayal, reminding me that life continues no matter how broken our hearts feel. I thought about Michael, not as the man who tried to steal from me, but as the boy I raised. I couldn't hate him entirely, but I couldn't trust him again either. Love remained, but it was scarred, fragile, changed forever. Yet in the quiet, I realized something profound. I had survived. Against lies, betrayal, and schemes, I had stood tall. My late husband's legacy remained intact, not just the money, but the spirit of resilience we built together. I whispered softly into the wind, as if he could hear me still. I kept it safe, love. For us, for him. And for the first time in months, peace settled into my bones. On a bright spring morning, I walked through the city alone, my head held high. The shops bustled, children laughed, and life moved forward. People glanced at me, some recognizing me from the news, but I no longer cared. I wasn't a victim in their eyes. I was a survivor. Stopping at a cafe, I ordered tea and sat by the window. The steam curled upward, soft and warm, and I thought about the future. Not about battles, not about betrayal, but about living, traveling, reading, giving back. My life was not over. In many ways, it was beginning again. As I sipped my tea, I whispered the words that had carried me through every dark night. He thought I'd walk away broken, but I walked away free, and with that I smiled, not for the world, not for Michael, not for Vanessa, but for myself.